Since Mr. Obama took office in January of 2009, over 14 million Americans have left the workforce, making a record 94,708,000 of our fellow citizens that are not in the labor force as of May 2016. These numbers didn't stop Obama from boasting last week that America's better off now than when he came into office. Take a look at this.
By almost every economic measure, America's better off than when I came here at the beginning of my presidency. That's the truth. Over the past 6 years, our businesses have created more than 14 million new jobs. That's the longest stretch of consecutive private sector job growth in our history. We've seen the first sustained manufacturing growth since the 1990s. We cut unemployment in half, years before a lot of economists thought we could.
Cut unemployment in half. Folks, Mr. Obama will go down in history as the only occupier of the Oval Office never to have had a year of 3% growth. That takes a lot of left-wing extremism to accomplish that. He deserves a hat tip from the Maoists in the world. It takes a lot of effort to put a stranglehold on the U.S. economy the way he has. Let me talk more about this fantasy land with Dan Mitchell. He's a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, joining me now. Hey, Dan, welcome to Dana here with me, Chris Salcedo.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
The jobs report. I'm doing well, thank you, sir. The jobs report, 38,000 out of an expected 164,000. Lackluster doesn't exactly cover it. And the big driver of the reason why we're seeing the unemployment rate drop is not because we're adding jobs. It's because we use something called the U3 number. That our government calculates, which stops counting people once we can't use them for political sound bites anymore, if they're not on welfare or they're not working. So they get forgotten and not counted by our ever so compassionate government. What say you on this?
Two things. First, the number one statistic that Obama overlooked in his remarks was that median household income is lower today than when he took office. That is the most important bit of economic data for the well-being of the American people, and it's terrible. Now, what about the unemployment numbers? The federal government collects several different measures of unemployment. Obama is focusing on the official unemployment rate. But, as you've intimated, the unemployment rate can fall for two reasons. It can fall because people are getting jobs, or it can fall because they're just giving up. And unfortunately, what's happened mostly during the Obama years is a lot of people have given up. Now, why does this matter? I don't want to sound like a boring economist, but this is really important. What is economic growth? It's additional output in your economy. How do you get additional output? By having more labor and capital in your economy. Well, we are losing the labor out of our economy. The bad government policies, whether it's things like minimum wages, Obamacare, higher taxes, they are making it less likely for companies to create jobs and less attractive for people to take jobs. People are just deciding to live off the government. That is a long-run recipe for becoming Greece, not for being the America that we all want it to be.
Yeah, and by the way, another stat that you folks got to know, that in May alone, nearly 500,000 folks are just up and no longer counted. They're not working. They're just no longer counted by Mr. Obama and his government. And to be fair, this is a practice that has been long a problem, where the Brian Williams Press and the government focuses on, again, that U3 number. U6 is what's reported on. That's real unemployment, and that's what we should be using. Let me ask you, Mr. Mitchell, the biggest detriment to America breaking out, I mentioned that we have not had 3% growth in any year that Mr. Obama has been in the Oval Office. What has been the biggest impediment, in your view, to unleashing the genius of our economic system?
Boy, that's a target-rich environment. I would say Obamacare might be at the top of the list because it was such a big, comprehensive piece of legislation that added higher taxes, which is bad for the economy. It added higher spending, which is bad for the economy. And it's one of the biggest regulatory burdens that's ever been imposed upon the productive sector. So there's all sorts of reasons why Obamacare by itself, worse than the fiscal cliff tax increase, worse than the fake stimulus, worse than some of the bailouts. Obviously reasonable people can disagree, but I'd have a hard time imagining anything could be worse than Obamacare.
Yeah, you mentioned median income too, and there's a real world practicality to that, folks. Is because right now, because of Obama's economy, the only thing that's out there are low-paying jobs, and that's why there's this big push around the country by liberals. They screw up the economy, they ruin America's economy, and they say, well, it's up to businesses now to raise the minimum wage to make up for our screw-up. So I have that about right, Dan?
I actually, I call this Mitchell's Law, even though, of course, I stole it from other people. Bad government policy begets bad government policy. The politicians do something that makes the economy slow down, and then they say, oh, look, people are suffering because the economy is slowing down, so let's add additional layers of regulation, taxes, and spending upon what we've already done. And as I said before, I wasn't just making some throwaway line. I really worry that when you keep doing one bad policy after another, cumulatively, it adds up, and sooner or later, it's not just that we're only growing 2% a year when we used to grow 3% a year. You add all these things together, along with the demographic changes that we're seeing, and we really are on a path to becoming Greece. Yeah. That is not a good thing. This is a crisis that nobody is paying enough attention to.
I agree. And you know what? Now folks are openly saying the R word, leading to the end of Obama's occupation of the Oval Office. Dan Mitchell, Cato Institute, sir. Appreciate you being here. I'm Dana.
Thank you.
All right.